Today we will be discussing Chapter 7, Section 2, which is found on page 179 of your book. It is titled Marine Ecosystems. When you finish this section, you should be able to explain why an estuary is a very productive ecosystem, compare salt marshes and mangrove swamps, describe two threads to coral reefs, and describe two threads to ocean organisms. Marine ecosystems are located mainly in coastal areas and in the open ocean. Organisms that live in coastal areas adapt to the changes in water level and salinity. Organisms that live in the open ocean adapt to changes in temperature and the amount of sunlight and nutrients available. Coastal areas that are covered by salt for all or part of the time are known as coastal wetlands. Coastal wetlands provide habitat and nesting areas for many fish and wildlife. They also absorb excess rain, which protects them from flooding. They filter out pollutants and sediments, and they provide recreational areas for boating, fishing, and hunting. An estuary is an area where fresh water from rivers mix with salt water from the ocean. As the two bodies meet, currents form and cause mineral-rich mud and dissolved nutrients to fall to the bottom, becoming available to producers. Estuaries are very productive because they are constantly receiving fresh nutrients from the river and the ocean, while surrounding land protects the estuaries from the harsh forces of ocean waves. Estuaries support many marine organisms because they receive plenty of light for photosynthesis and plenty of nutrients for plants and animals. The light and nutrients support large populations of rooted plants as well as plankton. Plankton, in turn, provide food for fish, which can be eaten by larger animals such as dolphins, manatees, and otters. Oysters and clams live anchored to rocks and feed by filtering plankton from the water. Organisms that live in estuaries are able to tolerate variations in salinity because the salt content of the water varies as fresh water and salt water mix when tides go in and out. Estuaries connect to rivers, providing protected harbors and access to oceans. As a result, many of the largest ports have been built on estuaries. 6 of the 10 largest urban areas, including New York and Galveston, Houston area, have been built on estuaries. Estuaries that exist in populated areas were often used as places to dump wastes. Estuaries filled with waste could then be used as building sites. The pollutants that damage estuaries include sewage, pesticides, fertilizers, and toxic chemicals. Most of these pollutants break down over time, but estuaries cannot cope with the amounts produced by dense human populations. Salt marshes are maritime habitats characterized by grasses, sedges, and other plants that have adapted to constant periodic flooding and are primarily found throughout the temperate and subarctic regions. The salt marsh supports a community of clams, fish, aquatic birds, crabs, and shrimp. Salt marshes, like other wetlands, also absorb pollutants to protect inland areas. Mangrove swamps are tropical or subtropical marine swamps that are characterized by dense growth of several species of mangrove trees adapted for growing in shallow salt water. The swamp helps protect the coastline from erosion and reduces the damage from storms. They also provide a home for about 2,000 animal species. Mangrove swamps have been filled with waste and destroyed in many parts of the world. Rocky shores have many more plants and animals than the sandy shores do because the rocks provide anchorage for seaweed that animals can live on. Sandy shores dry out when the tides go out. Animals are adapted to the effects of drying and exposure to low tide. Birds prod the sand for animals that have not buried themselves deep enough to escape the tidal pull. A barrier island is a long ridge of sand or a narrow island that lies parallel to the shore and helps protect the mainland. South Padre Island is the largest barrier island in Texas and the world's longest barrier island. Coral reefs are limestone ridges found in tropical climates and composed of coral fragments that are deposited around organic remains. Thousands of species of animals and plants live in the cracks and crevices of the coral reefs, which make coral reefs among the most diverse ecosystems on Earth. Corals are predators that use stinging tentacles to capture small animals such as zooplankton that float or swim close to the reef. Coral reefs are productive ecosystems, but they are also very fragile. Corals live in clear, warm, salt water where there's enough light for photosynthesis. If the water surrounding the reef is too hot or too cold, or if fresh water drains into the water surrounding the coral may die. If the water is too muddy, polluted, or too high in nutrients, the algae that live within the coral will either die or grow out of control. If the algae grows out of control, it may kill the coral reef. Oil spills, sewage, pesticides, and silt runoff have been linked to coral reef destruction. Overfishing can devastate fish populations, upsetting the balance of the reef's ecosystem. A coral reef grows very slowly, and it may not be able to repair itself after chunks of coral are destroyed by careless divers or ships dropping anchor. Much of the ocean's life is concentrated in the shallow coastal waters where sunlight penetrates to the bottom and rivers wash nutrients from the land. Seaweed and algae grow anchored to rocks and phytoplankton drift on the surface. Invertebrates and fish then feed on these plants. In the open ocean, phytoplankton grow only in areas where there is enough light and nutrients, resulting in one of the least productive of all ecosystems. Zooplankton, jellyfish, and tiny shrimp also live near the surface feeding on the phytoplankton. The depths of the ocean are very dark, so most food on the ocean floor consists of dead organisms that falls from the surface. Decomposers, filter feeders, and the organisms that eat them live in the deep areas of the ocean. Overall, the types of organisms that may be found in the layers of the ocean at various depths is dependent on available sunlight. The oceans are steadily becoming more polluted. Runoff from fertilized fields and industrial waste and sewage being discharged into rivers are major sources of ocean pollution. Overfishing and certain fishing methods are destroying some fish populations. Marine mammals get caught and drowned in the nets. Although it is illegal, some ships discard fishing lines into the ocean where they can strangle and kill fish and seals. The Arctic Ocean is rich in nutrients from the surrounding land masses and supports large populations of plankton, which feed a diversity of fish in open water and under the ice. These fish are food for ocean birds, whales, and seals. The Arctic ecosystem at the North and South Pole depends on marine ecosystems because nearly all the food comes from the ocean. Fish and seals then provide food for polar bears and the people on the land. The Antarctic is the only continent never colonized by humans. It is governed by an international commission and is used mainly for research. Even during the summer, only a few plants grow at the edges of the continent. So, as in the Arctic, plankton form the basis of the Antarctic food web, nourishing large numbers of fish, whales, and birds, such as penguins.